Matthew Moore's Wood Studio. I'm here in the shop and I just finished installing these ebony bars and this Greene Greene Gamble House inspired coffee table. Now, what I want to do today is to share with you guys how I made the ebony bars using this jig and to show you how to build this jig. Now what you're going to need is ebony bar stock that is the same height or width of your mortises that you're going to make. So for me, I used 5/16 of an inch square hole punches from Lee Valley, and I used ebony that was originally 5/16 of an inch all the way around, nice and square. So let's get started. First thing you want to do is to take a piece of material, so in this case I use mahogany, to flatten one face of it and bring it down to the thickness of your ebony bar stock. And then you want to square it up on two sides, and then you want to cut it to length for the length of your jig. So for me, I made that 10 inches. And then I grabbed some 3/4 inch Baltic birch plywood and I cut that to 10 inches wide, and I cut 2 strips off of that 4 inches deep. And then I drew a line 1/4 inch deep along the length of both of my pieces of plywood. I then took one of my pieces, spread some glue on it, and lined it up with the 1/4 inch mark I made on this piece. And then I shot my spacer piece with some brads to hold it in place while the glue dried. I then take my other piece of plywood with the line on the bottom and get everything nicely lined up. And then with a square, I come in and mark in a line on the top, 2 inches in. I then take the square, still set at 2 inches, and make lines on both sides to create cross marks for where I want to drill. And then I drill 2 holes with a 7/8 inch Forstner bit, deep enough to hold both the washer and the end of the screw that came from my woodpecker's knob kit. I then find a 1/4 inch brad point bit to match the diameter of my screw. I then find the center of the dimple that was made from the Forstner bit and drill through both of my holes. And then quickly, I test my fit. I now take the face I drilled all of my holes in, because the opposite side has the line, and reference that against my drill press table. Bring my other piece, match the side that has the line against the bottom of the drill press, flip this over, hold it down nice and tight, get my bit centered, and drill all the way through. With one hole drilled, I'll take one screw and push that down. That'll help to align the other side, and then flip it back onto its side. Hold it tight together, find where the center of the hole is, and drill through. I then take a pencil and mark the side that my line is on. I take some sandpaper and some spray adhesive and put the spray adhesive on the sandpaper and stick my sandpaper to my piece. And just before I can put my jig together, I need to drill holes through the sandpaper. So I bring my bit down into the hole and drill a hole into each side. I can then bring my parts together, making sure that the line I drew earlier is facing the outside. And I grab my washer, put that through my screw, and then drop that into the hole. And do that on both sides. Flip it all over and push my screws all the way out, and then take my knobs and attach them. And then using the other board I brought down to 5/16 of an inch, I cut off a couple of test pieces for my jig. First thing I do is I take one of my test pieces, put it into my jig, and then lock it nice and tight. And then I bring my jig to my router and change the height so that I center the bit onto the workpiece. And once I think that's nice and centered, I lock down the height of my bit. And then I make a pass to test my setup, and if I need to, I adjust. Now let's see what we get. We got a beautiful profile right there. It's a beautiful round over. Perfect, that's exactly what I was looking for. And now I'll make passes with my 5/16 of an inch ebony bars to create all the round overs that I need for my drawer handles. With our ebony bars profiled, the next thing I do is install a sacrificial fence to my crosscut sled. So I just have a piece of 1/2 inch plywood here, and it's just clamped down to my Incra fence here. Now, what I'm going to do with these two pieces, I'm just going to start with two for now, is cross cut them and get a nice clean, crisp edge on one side. I then bring my piece of ebony up with the edge that I cross cut on one side, and I make a mark for where I need the cut for length. And I take my other piece and bring that to my center bar and do the exact same thing. And then over at the table saw, I extend that mark to the rounded edge. And then using the kerf in my sacrificial fence, and I line up my piece so that when the cut happens, it'll happen on the waist side of my pencil line. And then back at the handle, I test my fit. This one happens to be just a touch too long. This one as well. Back at the table saw, I bring my piece of ebony up to the kerf, extend it just ever so slightly into the kerf, and then using a pencil, hold it down. And then I make my cut. And I continue this process until I get 3 pieces that fit with a friction fit inside of the mortises with just one corner, as you can see here. Then I take my piece with some 220 grit paper and start to sand. Then with the 220 grit paper, I also take the edges and I round those over a little bit, just to soften them up. And I touch the top of the piece. After the 220, I take some 320 grit paper and do the same thing. Followed by some 600 grit paper. I hit the corners with the 600 grit paper. I grab the edges with the 600 grit paper. And then with a 220 sanding block, I chamfer the back edges. And then on a cloth with some rouge, I buff the bar to a really nice shine. And then with the skewer, I take some glue and I put that into the mortise. And then take my piece and push it into the mortise. Grab a dead blow hammer. Perfect, there's my first bar, 2 more to go. And now with the ebony bars installed into my handles, these guys really just pop. They look fantastic, such a great green and green detail. Now, if you like this excerpt from this build, please head over to mmwoodstudio.com and check out this build plus the other projects we have that you guys can sign up for individually, or by getting a yearly subscription have access to everything. So please subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and hit that thumbs up button if you like this video. If you're watching this over on Facebook, hit the like button, share it on your timeline, and head over to the Wood Studio page and like us there as well. And then head over to mmwoodstudio.com, and as I said before, check out all of our great projects, and have a great week in the shop.